of the McCraney Property Company, and with offices in West Palm and Orlando. And his organization has developed, owned, managed over 2.5 million square feet of industrial distribution space, right? And all of the things related, variety of kinds. Has a couple dozen gas stations, and he's working on what was 1.5 million square feet. Now
Yeah,
it's more.
we'll deliver. It'll say final.
So he's got a huge agenda. He's meanwhile been developer of the year, and we'll I think see why in Central Florida for the last 2 years. And he's an active CCIM. So those of you who are interested in that designation, here's one. And he's also recognized with the SIOR certification. And he's also involved in something called the Young Presidents Association, which, for example, Nathan Collier is also a part of. Fierce young leaders in the business world. And he was chair for Florida in that organization a short time ago, and he's active at the national and regional level. He also has a long list of civic and charitable organizations he's affiliated with. His education was from Villanova with postgrad work from Harvard and Duke. And here's what I really want to tell you about. He's a mountain climber. And he not only climbs industrial mountains and real estate mountains, but he has climbed Mount Elbrus in Russia, 18,500 feet. Mount
Aconcagua.
Aconcagua, thank you, in Argentina, 22,241 feet. And my favorite, that I've always been fascinated with, Mount Kilimanjaro, 19,300, Mount Rainier, and he's also gone rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. Now, Steve, you realize there's a road. You didn't have to go climb it, but he did. He's also a marathoner and also a guy engaged in lots of exciting activities. So we're really pleased to have him here. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to get this set up, figure out which way you want to go. So here's what I want to do. I want to know what you want to talk about. And we can talk about pretty much anything. We can talk about starting a business. We can talk about going through a recession. We can talk about e-commerce, because I think that's the way of the future. We can talk a lot about character and getting through the recession. I can share with you that I entered the recession with one bank alone owing just over $100 million signed personally. So I'm a guy that's actually really happy to be at the party, right? Survival's a big deal. But I'll talk about whatever you want to do. I always want to leave somebody with some ideas, so I have a lot of ideas of where I think industrial real estate is going. I can tell you this, I'm not very good at many things in life. Really amazing father. I'm an incredible husband. I've been married for 25 years, and she is still my girlfriend. And I'm really good at industrial real estate. Outside of that, I kind of stink at pretty much everything else. So I'd rather take a casual approach, and I'd rather talk about what you want to talk about, because I have to listen to myself think 24 hours a day. And it's like when I'm climbing, I have never had earphones in my ear, and I've been out as long as a month because there's so much noise in my head and ideas that I never need music to disrupt that. So what do you guys want to talk about? And we'll start it off any way that you guys see. It mattered being late, right? It mattered being late because I'm like their staller. So what do you guys want to talk? Give me some ideas, and we'll go off on any direction you want.
Industrial, not really, that's sexy.
Oh, you have no idea.
So I just kind of like, what got you interested in industrial? My brother's a industrial builder for JLL.
Okay.
What got him interested, so I just kind of like,
Okay, you're going to get that answer here today. For sure you're going to get that answer because you're going to start to realize how incredibly sexy it is You can tell I'm not very sexy, right? You can tell I'm not very sexy. And I get a lot of that, by the way, you know, absolutely. So, good thing I'm married, huh? So, what else? All right. Perfect, perfect. We will definitely hit that. I have that in here. No, this is like ping pong. I'm going for it now. I remember that conversation. Yeah. That's what you do when you have nothing else to do and you're with CBRE and you've entered a recession in the 80s and you have no way to make an income. It makes you a scrappy dog pretty quick. And I think life is about being a scrappy dog. And you either go entrepreneurial or you go corporate. And I found that getting up and putting one foot in front of the other every day for me and my family would be much more profitable long term than taking a corporate position. But the corporate positions are really good to get grounded, to get all your education, so that when you do launch, you know where you're going and you know how to do what you need to do. Otherwise, you have no training. So the corporate is probably a great way to start. Anybody want to talk about anything else?
I believe, that e-commerce is the future. Do you think this internet is going to, take away any jobs in real estate? Do you think this is like a broker?
No, it's going to enhance jobs in the real estate industry. Yeah, real estate is, I mean, I wake up every morning for 25 years. I can't wait to get to work. Can't wait to get there. Work with this amazing team, many that have been there. I don't think I have hardly anybody there less than 9 to 10 years. My corporate lawyer's been with 22 years, my CFO, and and I love sports. I love it's a team. I don't run a company, I run a huddle. And I keep it fairly tight, and when there's an audible called, we can move on a dime. And we did that over the last 24 hours, which I'll share with you today. We picked up a deal that I've kind of had pulling my hair out since middle of last week with another board member and from here, and that transaction started at our advisory board meeting, going outside and sitting and having a chat where they said, "You're the guy that should be buying this," and I kind of like put it off because I've got a lot on my plate, and then it got really hot like 2 weeks ago, and we came to agreement. I was giving a talk in Miami at the RealShare conference yesterday, and in between a talk that I gave on e-commerce and a financial panel I was on, we cut a deal. And that deal will result in roughly a $10 million transaction, and I'll share that with you today too, and I'll show that to you. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you to talk about mentioning money coming from other parts of the world besides America and different ways to finance projects rather than the traditional thing.
Okay, so we'll save that to the end. We'll talk about that. I'm assuming you're talking about EB-5 money. Okay. Yeah, interesting. And the only thing I would add to that is the role that crowdfunding is going to play in that, because I'm trying to learn about it. A Wall Street firm has asked me to be on a board of a crowdfunding, and I'm concerned about liability because they're talking about broker-dealer networks. And when you talk about broker-dealer networks, did anybody see the movie, the Leonardo DiCaprio, was it called Wall Street, Wolf of Wall Street? Well, so I start thinking about that, and I worry that crowdfunding is going to become that. Sold through the penny stock chain, and people putting in $100 to $200 to $500, and I worry about that, and I think it is going to be a giant piece of the market within the next 10 to 15 years, maybe sooner. Okay, so are we ready? Really, I hate standing behind something. You sure? Can we try one more plug? Anything? Computer on the right. Boy, if I stand behind this, you're going to make me feel really impressive. Okay, so why don't we get started? Now, I'll wander around and walk around a little bit, but I'll come back here for the slides. I have 742 slides. We'll be out of here by 9, and the pizzas and beer are on me. So, okay, so long and the short, I was a kid that dreamed about business since, I can't remember not dreaming about business. And I wake up like on the wall every day. I have never had a cup of coffee, and you're about to figure out why. So I always wanted to build things, right? I always wanted to make things. And the recession came. I was a CBRE cold caller. I was out there pounding 50 doors a day, standard CBRE program, learning a lot about the market. The recession came. The world stopped, just like it did in 07, 08, depending on what market you were in and what you were doing. Notwithstanding that, I decided to build a gas station. Dick Donnellan, if you guys have seen Dick before, Dick trained me. And do these guys know Dick here? Okay, so Dick was in CBRE. He sat behind me, unbelievable talent. And I basically did everything from pick up their laundry, to go get their lunch, to go knock on doors, to take pictures, to put together, learned how to put financial packages together, learned how to do, spreadsheeting in those days, and it was I think called Microsoft Word in those days, maybe, something like that. And long and the short, learned a lot, and then decided that there was no money to be made. I had left a job. I graduated Villanova. I worked my way through Villanova as a car jockey in Atlantic City at Bally's Casino 4 days a week. And I was the guy that hitchhiked from Georgia to Pennsylvania to go to that school. And, so it was pretty meager beginnings, but I always felt like every day is a great challenge. Let's see what we can make of it, right? And met probably 24 chairmen of companies coming into that hotel. They made the mistake of giving me their card and not realizing that I would actually write them every other month. And I did that all through college and had a lot of offers through college. Ended up, Ed Finkelstein was the chairman of Macy's. I was selected for his program and basically became a fashion financial analyst and learned the retail business, which was an unbelievable business. It has really nothing to do with retailing. It's all about logistics and costs and markdown dollars, and it's not about fashion. It's about trends and margin. And I loved the business. I used to think it was going to say McCraney's outside of that instead of Macy's. And I came out of Ralph Lauren one day, and where I was an assistant buyer, and was eating a hot dog, and I saw this real estate Money magazine had just come out probably a few months ago as a new magazine. And I picked it up, and it said Real Estate Millionaires Under 30. There were 5 real estate brokers on it. They probably wished they hadn't published that, because I called every single one of them and then went and sat on their offices and met each one of them. Ended up getting offers from CBRE and Cushman Wakefield. Both happened to have opportunities in Florida. I packed up a Ryder truck and headed south. And that's how I got started. Long and the short, the recession came. I built a gas station, and then kept reading about all of the contaminated gas stations that were out there and ones that were closing. I ended up buying over a period of roughly, this was my first gas station on the bottom left. And I ended up getting that. We opened the doors, and I had no idea how to hardly even run the cash register. I ended up there probably 18 hours a day, and I thought it would kill me. I'd never worked so hard in my life. I was just married, had a baby right after that, and it was exciting. And the interesting thing is, we took a $35,000 salary from that station, and that station profited about $275 its first year. We invested and did another one, and then another one, and another one, and just kept taking a $35,000 salary from each one. We hit 31 gas stations after roughly about 5.5 years. We were buying closed down contaminated gas stations from major banks and from oil companies with a baseline environmental, which meant I was having them financed as though they were clean. We were using the federal Superfund dollars and the state Superfund dollars to clean them up. We grew quite a company, my wife and I, and 7 years later we sold the company. We were 168 employees, and we were hitting a little over $35 million a year in annual sales. We didn't have any partners because nobody wanted to be a partner with somebody that was young and broke. So it was interesting for us, and we learned a lot. Mostly what we learned, that we were really good together. And that blossomed into a really nice organization that took us over 7 Florida counties with a fleet of trucks and just shy of 175 employees, and we learned a lot, you know, and it was kind of fun to learn that and be just out of your 20-somethings. So from there, I'll come back to that. From there, we were in the, we started out and bought, everything in life kind of is timing. We ended up buying about 1 million square feet of industrial real estate during that downturn at a very bad time, and I will make the story short. We bought basically 1 million square feet of industrial warehousing, which is how we got into the warehouse business, at a roughly a price of $18 a foot. To land the plane, we sold it 7 years later for $97 a foot. We never refinanced it. So and we bought what was B and C grade property, and we turned it into A- and B property. We ended up more than doubling the rents over time, which really meant just bringing them to market, you know. And what we really did is we just cleaned them up, we painted them, we gave them service, we looked after the customer. It's, we have made tremendous amount of profit by just being nice. Nice really pays well, let me tell you. Arrogance takes a bench seat. And you saw that in the recession, because all of those people that were of difficult attitude and sued their banks, well, just so you know, they're all out of business today mostly. So that being nice really helps out. So we grew that business. I ended up selling that business, and I took the dollars and take a 1 million square feet and figure just on an average basis, we picked up, call it $80 a foot. It was a very successful program. We had no partners, and obviously started out with no money. And in fact, to do the gas station transaction, our first one, we had $63,000, my wife and I, between the two of ourselves. We borrowed almost $300,000, almost like crowdfunding from friends, for a 30-day basis to actually make our account look like we had money in it. And we used that as our leverage, and we borrowed $1 million, having pretty much nothing. Paid all that money back the day after closing, and we were just scrapping it out, figuring, hope this works for us. And such are good blessings. It worked out okay for us. So then we, as you know, as I said, we bought a lot of land, and we bought enough land to build, with the profits from that first transaction, to build over 1 million square feet. And we grew significantly. SunTrust Bank was our major bank. I can remember being like, I want to say 33, 34, maybe 34, 35, and came out of a closing, and I looked at my in-house legal and I said, did they really do that? And they had just created a credit line for us for $103 million. And coming from where we had come from, it was astonishing to me. But it was also so humbling, because you knew they were trusting you and it was all about you know, and you'll hear me say this perhaps a number of times over the next 11 hours. People do business with people they know, like, and trust, right? Who wants to do business with someone that makes life difficult, right? So, we built a lot of product in business parks, and then the world stopped. And the only reason that this was here is because I was on Mount Rainier on a training climb, and it's not one of those photos, but I was on Mount Rainier for a training climb with a bunch of guys that were all in this organization, YPO, with me. And we came down, and one of my best buddies runs roughly $11 billion hedge fund called Lighthouse Partners. And we realized that when we came down that Lehman Brothers had fallen. And when that happened, the world stopped. And we thought everyone that was there ran a significant company. One of the guys ran Merrill Lynch for the state of Florida. One buddy ran this hedge fund. Another one ran a giant printing business. He prints every Coke bottle label east of the Mississippi. And we knew life was going to be different. And sure enough, we learned so much over that basically next year and a half. And you would have, you never would have realized the pain that comes out of fear, because you can't pay it back. You know that eventually you will run out of money. And we came within 90 days of running out of money completely. So I'll tell you, we're kind of all flying along. You guys may not think this is funny. I kind of think everything's funny, okay? So we're flying along, and life is good, and who knew it was going to hit us right in the face, right? So first it kind of felt like this, and then it actually felt like this. So and all of my daughters thought this was really funny, okay? My wife didn't think it was completely appropriate. I know I'll never be asked, so I'm going to just keep talking. So during that session, these were the properties that we bought or built. This isn't a full compilation, but this is what we call the South. This was our Palm Beach County, Martin County. And this is what happens when you buy real estate that is B and C real estate, and you clean it up, you fix it up, you service a customer. And we were really pleased with this return and really pleased with these multiples, okay? And but by then we had already spread into Orlando and Kissimmee and moving into Central Florida. So this was just a sampling of what was going on then. So, someone had said, what did you learn from the recession? Well, I'll share with you what we learned. Staying power is pivotal, right? I was so far out over my skis, you can scarcely imagine. Protect the downside at all costs. We're a different company today than we were 5 years ago. Never bet the company. Focus on short-term strategy. Open kimono with your lenders, and I'll share that with you. If your lender isn't behind you, these are the people that are no longer in business, and they are working somewhere else today. Because generally, if we can't make it work, then probably nobody's going to be able to make it work, right? Retool the organization to meet a changing environment. Watch interest rates. Hedge the floaters, and I'll share, because we all think we're in a rising interest rate market before long, and that's gonna be interesting because, as metrics go, if you think about any kind of real estate, if interest rates rise a point, okay, in the present market that we're in today, then NOI has to go up 16%. I'm not betting NOI is rising 16% because even though the market is frothing and you're seeing these amazing debt yields today and debt coverage looks great, the rents are still below the all-time highs of 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. okay? Deleverage and consolidate, I'll share that with you today, and keep the corporate culture. Failure is never an option. I have never failed before. I have no intention of ever failing. I never give up the ship. I will never sit on the bench. Today, what we became is a company that, coming out of the recession, and I'll share that with you a little bit. Today it's all Florida real estate. I believe that the last 50 years was about South Florida and the growth of Palm Beach to Miami. I believe that the next 50 years is about the I-4 corridor, and I call that basically East Tampa through Lakeland, through Orlando to Lake Mary, and I believe that 50 years from now that will look like South Florida, where it has grown together. And it's happening right now. If you leave, look what's happened in the last 20 years, just between Plant City, if you will, if you know those markets, and Tampa. It's all growing together. Brandon, Plant City, look what's happening in Lakeland. All those exits from West Lakeland all the way to 33 are all growing like crazy now. They're talking about that new college that's going to go on in East Lakeland. Right, Route 27 is growing. Look what Bobby Ginn and others did there, and Ford Distribution is there, and H.H. Gregg is there, and Amazon is there. And go a little further, and you're at Disney, right? So it's happening, right? And we also know that the Department of Transportation is putting $23 billion into 21 miles of roadway, and it's all happening in Orlando. To me, that's incredibly promising, right? So I may live in South Florida, but we're doing so much business in Central Florida. But we're looking for Class A product, or we're buying it, or we're building it, generally greater than 100,000 square feet. We're IRR driven, and I'll talk to you about metrics in just a bit. Our building specs are, as I said, 100 to 500,000 square feet. We're doing a 700,000 square footer right now. We'll consider bills under 150, but in essence, we're trying to write deals to like a 7.5 to 8 yield. We're betting spreads. We're generally betting 1.5 to hoping for 2 points at exit. So if we were in at an 8 today, we're hoping we're out at a 6 cap. But we know we're in a rising interest rate market over time. So what's that going to look like, and how much, how much growth in that interest rate is going to happen over the next 6 months to year? So we're watching all of that really close. We're looking at, what we didn't really do before. The world was kind of a debt cover market years before, and we were always like, well, if you got a 1.2 on your debt cover, everybody's fine. So, but today we're saying it's stabilized. Can we be at like a 1.7, a 1.8? Can we see that we can get to a 2.0 debt cover? Because when we crash it, the cash flows, we're looking at saying, God, what happens if we go below a 1.0 debt cover, right? So we're watching debt yields and making sure we're nicely into the double-digit range, because you can't even get a CMBS loan if you're down south of 9. So and the CMBS market right now is exploding. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of at night. I'll kind of skip over that. That just kind of tells you what we're doing. And let me go on, and I'll tell you a bit more about the recession. So you know what? You learn a lot at really difficult times. And when the recession came, we kind of didn't know what hit us. I take a huge responsibility that we feed families. And we have a lot of people that have been in our game, stayed with us, stayed strong, been unwavering. So during the recession, I ran through roughly a little over $7 million of personal cash out of my accounts, making sure that because we saw some of the tenancy collapse from darn near 100% at the height over 18 months, let's say, collapsed to almost 50%. Well, we all know that when you run your performas and you're running Argus, you kind of don't make money until you're over 70%. So that delta was my integrity. When those guys, when I was a much younger guy, signed on and said, you know, we trust you with this amount, I took it so heartfelt, you can't even believe it. And I thought, no matter what, when there was a group of roughly 30 developers that met almost on a monthly basis secretly. And we would all fly in, and it was probably some of Florida's largest developers from all walks of development. And we would meet, and everybody would go around the table a couple of times, and it would take a few hours, and you'd hear who was doing what to who, and what was happening in the market, and how people were strategizing, and what attorneys they should be using, because it felt like the plane was completely loaded and just kept going down. And you just thought it would never hit the bottom. You know, you'd lose more tenancy, there was more bad news on TV, and the TV loves bad news, right? I mean, they just love bad news, and they just preach it, and pretty soon perception becomes reality, right? So it was interesting, and I can remember people saying to me during those times, "You're absolutely crazy. You know, you have a nice big portfolio. Secure the portfolio, hire this certain attorney that is working, you know, that has had great success against X bank." And I took the position of that was not the way that I was raised, that was not the way to do business, that was not what my character was. I don't want to sit there and fight. I think it's negative. I've had 2 lawsuits in 25 years, neither one that we created. And we solved them in a way that would say to the market, you don't do this to us. It's just, be nice to people, for crying out loud. It pays so handsomely well. And I went to just negotiate with my bank, and we were this bank's, they would always say, you're our largest real estate customer in Florida. And I can remember getting a call. We had an opportunity to sell right before the recession started. And when I was climbing Mount Rainier, it was kind of a celebration because we were supposed to close 3 weeks after that. And that $63,000, I say to you humbly, would have yielded pre-tax $100 million to my wife and I. And to me, that is unbelievably humbling from a small redneck South Georgia town that I came from. And this is when Lehman Brothers happened. 72 hours. This REIT out of California bailed on us. I got a call 2 weeks later, and I'll tell you, it was from principal. And they said, "We know your integrity. We know your product like the back of our hand. We've seen you perform it. We have a 1031. We will close in 48 hours, no due diligence. You're going to take an $18 million haircut because we heard in the market what the price was." My team and I huddled around our table in my office, my 3 senior people, and chatted about it. And we said, what could this be? It's a recession, right? A year in, a year out, 6 months of ugly, and we'll deal with it, right? Who would have known it would have lasted 5 years, right? And it was despicable. I can tell you there are defining moments that happen in your life, and I had lost a brother in a plane crash a few years before that, and I can tell you that I walked into, and my wife was sitting in our den in our bedroom watching TV one night and reading, and I walked up, and tears were running down my face, and I said to her, I never realized that what I have been trained to do my whole life now, because I've been thinking about this stuff since the day I feel like I was born, no longer has any value. I had a daughter at UNC Chapel Hill. I had a daughter that was going to be going to college, another one going to college shortly, and I am thinking at that moment, are we going to live in this beautiful house that we have built for ourselves on the Intercoastal in South Florida? Am I going to have to tell my kid that she can't go to college there anymore and may not be able to go to college any? And how are we going to survive this? Because we were down to running out of cash in roughly 120 days or so. We would have been completely out of cash. Not a dime left. And I got a call from my bank, from the chairman of our largest bank. And basically we had a meeting and he said, because at that level, you know, you're spending time with a lot of just unbelievably good and brilliant people. And he said, you know, the bottom line was, and I'll translate long conversations into, if you could move your debt in 60 days, we'll make it worth your while. We're going to our best borrowers in every state. The FDIC has asked us to raise $1 billion in 60 days to reduce global real estate debt. You have been transparent. You have been a gentleman. You have done the right things. You have communicated on a weekly basis. You think you can do this. What he didn't know is my CFO and I had been going to Wall Street for 18 months every single 30 days. Again, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. At that point, all we did is plug into the relationships. We knew we were going broke. We couldn't even afford to stay there overnight. We would take a JetBlue out of Palm Beach, a 5:50 a.m. JetBlue, get into New York. We'd split up. He'd hit 4 Wall Street firms. I'd hit 4. And the big ones on our day that we thought we needed to be together, we'd hit 3 that afternoon. And then we'd bail and we'd head to the airport and we were home by midnight. And we did this for 18 months. When our preparation met that opportunity, we plugged in. Because we had that legal on staff that had been with us for so long and knew everything about us. He had been my private real estate attorney before he joined us from his law firm. We closed that deal in 15 days. We paid we closed it with Jefferies, okay? It was a Singaporean sovereign wealth fund that we went into, a CMBS loan. We struck the deal over the phone over a weekend of probably a half dozen calls, and we closed. And that bank that had been very tough on us, who had been very gracious in the end, that reduction was $24 million. And then I flew up for a celebration dinner with them. Imagine that. Because the FDIC had forced everybody to write down, all banks to write down debt so far that on the day that they closed, they were thrilled because they actually made a lot of money on that day. And we're back today doing business with that bank, and it's incredibly humbling, right? Because most of the people by that bank and other banks were wiped out. And it was because of being nice, and it was because of being open book, and it was because of working our fannies off. And have a relentless passion. I will stack our team against anyone because we're what I would call a run and shoot offense. And we're going to be very strategic. We've worked together a long time, and we know how to run the play. And we have amazing trust in each other in our circle to know that everybody has a job and that life is based upon our execution and our to get it done. So that's how we got through the recession. Many people said during the recession, you know, if you survive, those that survive will be the victors. I will share with you today that this year we will probably build more industrial real estate than any other REIT or any other company in the state of Florida. This year we will deliver within 2 months almost 1.6 million square feet to the market. All I will tell you 100% spec as well, okay? And I have always been, all the buildings that we did even prior to this recession, I have always been a spec individual because I believe if you can't see it, touch it, look at it, how can you lease it? And it is tough to get banks to sign on and take that level of risk with you. But again, with that risk and mitigating the downturn on it will generally bode well. So that's the recession, right? That was way longer than I thought. I think this is the first time I have told that story to a crowd. But it's humbling. You just cannot imagine the losses. We saw our equity position drop 50 million. We saw cash go out the door. And I never reduced a salary, and I never fired an individual because I knew they had nowhere to go. And I knew that, we had people that we had out on the street, girls that were in the office that had been admin and junior property managers that became cold callers and just would bang 50 doors a day. And little by little, we were filling up and filling up and filling up. And today, we're basically full. But it has been a long time. And while my name gets to be on the door, the truth of the matter is their names should be on the door. Because every day they have fought. And while they're out sweating, I am sitting in a cushy office. And it makes me feel bad. But I've got to do what I do best. And what I do best is provide direction. And I know how to run the play. And because I have done this for 25 years, and I know how important the cold calling is, and all of the letters that need to go out every single day, and the advertising has to happen. Because, what gets focused on in life is what gets done, right? So I'll take you through some of this. The rest of it probably isn't interesting. How am I doing on time? Are you done with me, or you want me to keep going, or I can go for a while? I can, let me talk to you a little bit about e-commerce and growth. It's industrial outlook. Someone asked before, industrial, is it really sexy? Let me tell you how sexy it is. My man, industrial is the new retail. Make no bones about it. You think retail's sexy? You think shopping malls are sexy? They're pretty sexy. They're pretty high fashion. Industrial is the new retail. Know it, live it, it's happening. How often do you go to Best Buy, I don't care, to Macy's, to Nordstrom's, to whatever store, and then you go back and order it online? Any of you do that? How many of you do that? Guys are so cheap. Of course you do that. I do that too. And where do you think that comes from? It comes from a warehouse. And that's why industrial real estate is growing so quickly now, and growing in ways that you would have never imagined. Today, old warehouses were 18 to 20 feet. We struck a deal today, and that deal is likely to be at 36 foot clear, so that they can rack it and put on additional floors for storage. The difference in warehouse today is warehouses of the future are going to be dark inside. Amazon bought the Kiva system. The Kiva system is robots, and what they do, it isn't like the red shirts are with the red shirts and the blue shirts. There is stuff all over the place. It is just tagged to an open slot, and it goes and picks up the entire case, brings it to a picker, and the picker is just looking at it. It's almost like at McDonald's. You're going to take a Big Mac, and you're going to take a milkshake, and you're going to take this, bing, 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 and they're loading it, and it goes out. We have Federal Express moving in today. I was at our warehouses. I flew into Orlando this morning. I flew to Lakeland, flew over a new parcel I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. I flew over all of our property in Orlando. We landed. I went and I met with Federal Express this morning. They took on 85,000 square feet of a spec warehouse, and I will tell you, we have built along John Young Parkway, and I'll show you the building in a little bit. We have built 400,000 square feet. We CO'd 2 months ago, maybe 9 weeks ago. We have 4 bays available. That's why you build spec, because if you do not build, they will not come. And if you build too much, it's going to be painful. But Federal Express leased 85,000 square feet for one account. We ran 18-hour days over the last 30 days because they said, we'll give you the deal if you can get us in 30 days. Nobody can get them in 30 days. We ran 18-hour days. We ran two shifts a day with breaks of tenant improvement. And their sole account for that operation is e-commerce with Walmart. Okay? And we have them. We started a project right along the Florida Turnpike at Taft Island. I'll show you that in a bit. We're building 700,000 square feet. We have been pouring concrete. You guys remember how much it rained over the last 3 months, right? Lots of rain, right? We have to deliver on December 15th. We'll deliver. We don't even have walls up yet. We have been pouring concrete from 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the last 21 days. It is the largest slab. You should see this thing. You look at the end of it, and the people are about like this big. The guy I was with this morning, he said, we can land on that. I'm like, yeah, but we're not. It's just huge. And guess who's taking it? A company called Bodick & Rhodes, who's the largest T-shirt distributor in the country, and they're taking 200,000 square feet. Had we not had it, we wouldn't have been able to sell it. The REITs won't build spec generally, so it takes kind of a wildcatting attitude a bit to do it, and a bank that really believes in you. And we want a 200,000 square foot deal. Now the deal's completely financeable, it's a great deal, it's moving, and we're looking at Nissan and we're looking at other organizations that need space and want exposure. And I think you'll see later, everything I do, it's always up front. I want major roadway. So let me just flip through some of this real quick. So e-commerce customers absorb 35 to 40% of all available large box spaces in the U.S. this past year. Okay, 2013 trends will continue at 30 to 35. Let me see if I can read some of this. Retailing today is undergoing profound and rapid change. Before it was all, you had an there was an awareness that happened from advertising. You had an interest, a desire, and then you moved. Today you're just going out and you're checking everything out. You're checking it out on your phones. There's a huge convergence, as I said, of industrial and retail real estate. And what's happening? The lines between real estate and retail are becoming blurred today. Showrooming will be the big thing. Amazon, a lot of the major e-commerce companies today are starting to set up stores that are 1,700 square feet to 2,000 square feet so that you can touch it and return it. Instead of having to put it back in the mail, you can just take it back to that small outlet. Other large retailers like the Gap take the position of, we have all of these stores, we don't need warehouses, we'll ship direct from store. And that's what they're doing. That talks about the showrooming I was saying. The good news is that retail e-commerce is generating demand for new space and driving 30 to 40% of the new industrial buildings that are being built. This is the hottest category in the market today. And if you look back over the last 50 years, the returns in industrial real estate have been more stable than any other sector that's in the market, including apartments, that has been just so exciting and wild for the last 5 years or so. I'll blow past that. But you'll see, here's happening with the Panama. Here's how this is going to change it. My wife and I were invited by the government of Panama to spend a weekend. And we got the grand tour from their then sitting president this past spring. And it was interesting that while we in Florida are all excited about the ports and everything that's happened in Miami, and we're talking about is Tampa, and is it going to go to Jacksonville, and what about the intermodal that's there just south of I-4 along 27 and near Haines City. And the truth of the matter is, their Minister of Transportation, we're sitting there having dinner, he didn't mention Florida once. Is that amazing? He said, you want to talk about growth? Watch Mobile. Watch coastal Texas. That's where the growth is going to come from. Watch Charleston. We know Norfolk's going to get it, right? So that was really interesting. But this is, you know, these are the markets that really were serviced from Port of LA and a West Coast environment. This is what's going to look like, you know, this is what it's going to look like after the canal reopens, okay? I talked to you about Kiva robots. So here's what's happening that's changing. Buildings are getting higher, and let me tell you, I shared with Wayne, we would love to have you guys down in the next couple of weeks if you have any interest. I mean, to see a 32-foot panel raised on a building of that size is monumental, and I'd be happy to host what we called a lunch on the slab, you know, and we do a lunch right out on the slab of the job, and you watch this envelope come up around. Pretty dynamic. But things are changing. Lights are changing. Fire systems are changing. Tractor trailer. You hear this, the old saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, right? We're building smaller buildings with more parking. You know, you don't make money on parking, but you satisfy customers and you check boxes and you get tenants that otherwise you may not have gotten. So a lot is changing in the buildings. You know, same-day delivery means 24 hours, right? This is what, years ago in 1990, this is what shipping direct looked like from companies. Let me just show you how it changes so quickly. This is what happened from 99 to 2002. Box gets a little fuller, doesn't it? Look at it. Look at what happens now. It's unbelievable how this market is taking off. It is clearly the future. You know, last year Amazon represented 30% of the market. Almost 40% was done through supply chains. That shares with you. The blue is the piece of the market that is owned, and look how this is growing on a year-by-year basis and how it's expected to grow all the way up to year 2025. This is how the internet is exploding, both the inner circle and outer circle. I mean, you look at Africa, Middle Africa. You know, I mean, look at that growth. Look at that anticipated growth, 187 to 241. You know, these are the densities that I watch to see where Florida is growing and where we anticipate that growth. Look right here. You see, this is that narrow South Florida that kind of has run the market, right, for the last number of decades. Look what's happening in Central Florida. Look at what's going to happen down the west side of Florida. But I will tell you, in the recession, Highway 41 down West Florida was absolutely decimated. And forget hurricanes. It was just an economic disaster. The post office is going to play a role. Federal Express is working on a program that we're working on as well called Smart Post, where the post office, to help the post office survive, Federal Express is working with them for what's called the last mile. So instead of having all of those trucks, post office has a lot of infrastructure, right? So they know how to deliver. They know where everybody's address is. You know, if Federal Express can make use of that at a very low cost, you know, it helps the government out a lot as well. This is what the inside of an e-commerce center looks like today. It's just full of conveyors, you know, and you see the double stacking, and it's just phenomenal. And I'd be remiss if I didn't show you a little bit about what we're doing, and I'll tell you about a couple of deals, and then I'll wrap up because I'm almost tired of hearing myself. So this is a project I'll come back to in just a minute. This was what I thought was my albatross. I owned 50 acres, a mile along the Florida Turnpike from Southern Boulevard to Belvedere Road in facing the Florida Turnpike. As I said, I always like the A position. I have a mile of frontage on this site, and we're ready to go build 400,000 square feet. Financing is set up. My plans are finished. And I have a REIT walk in a few weeks ago, and they say, we will pay you if you will sell this to us. And that rate was nearly $11 million. We have no debt on it, we have no partners, and we have no tax liability due to our loss carry forward from the recession, right? So I think that dollars are shovels, right? You know, you want to keep those shovels moving as quickly as possible, because my life is about return, right? Because that's how we run our module. And I'll come back to that. Is 400,000 square feet of spec that we just finished in Orlando. It is certainly the nicest industrial real estate in Central Florida today. That doesn't mean that someone will not better it within the next 6 months to a year, because I think our objective is always to continue to raise the bar and create quality. Kind of take a ULI point of view to making it a better place to live. So there's a lot of color, there's a lot of landscape on all my buildings, and I don't like my industrial warehouses to look like warehouses. I want it to look like retail. This is 100,000 square feet that we will finish within about 3 weeks in West Palm. It's my last parcel in the Vista Center. We will have built about 600,000, 700,000 square feet in that park, and we're really excited about this. We signed our first tenant today to 30,000 square feet. We were humbled and thrilled. That is the layout of that building. Built for a smaller user, 24 clear, 150 to 160 between the buildings for tractor trailer storage. It'll be smaller users, 10 to 15,000 square feet. More than that today, but we think the average user. Lots of frontage, and it will be a beautiful Class A, institutionally classed property. This is the building under construction, so we're kind of excited. The picture's probably dated, 2 weeks, and it's got a lot of color on it now. So this is 700,000 square feet that we're building in Orlando. I shared this project with you. We're really excited about this. It faces the Florida Turnpike. It's got great exposure. It is a Class A. We believe this building will sell within the next few years. In today's market, it would be probably a 5 3/4 to 6 1/4 cap type deal. And that's how it kind of lays out. It's pretty exciting to us. We got this deal. This is where execution matters. This is where it is. We have the ability to build 2 million square feet overall at this site. That is the Florida Turnpike at Taft-Vineland Road. We got this because of execution. We were against a REIT. A REIT couldn't perform in the owner's time. I will tell you, in everything we do in life, execution matters. We got a call, and they said, would you like to do a proposal while REIT is trying to figure out how they're going to get requisitioned a $950 air ticket. I bought one and flew to Philadelphia. I had my office working like crazy to find out what each brother liked to eat, what they drink, calling people in that town, researching. I showed up with two giant big bottles of vodka, because that's what they drank, and a big thing of subs, and made friends. And being nice mattered. We signed a deal where the rent's $1 million 48 hours later. Being nice pays. Executing matters. And the REIT was standing there holding their shoe, and we weren't proud. We just had an opportunity, and we were going to execute on it, and it happened. That is the parcel that we went through the recession with. That was a kind of a big deal to us, and what was our albatross has become our sowsier. This is another building that we're doing right now in South Florida. So I was late today. I was late You can imagine I'm late a lot. And I'm not proud of it. My wife lets me know every day about it. So we went to negotiating and last week, and this deal happened today. So I am sorry that I missed the first part of our session, but we signed a contract today on these two parcels that I flew over this morning. And the guy that runs Duke for Florida, we were on the phone yesterday together, and it's like, there are all these REITs, they all want it. You and I are friends. Let's deal. And we put it to bed, and I will tell you, again, for at least the fourth or fifth time, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And during our advisory board session, we went out and into that lobby and started talking about this transaction. And I was, as you can see, had my hands full. And I thought, that's not for me. And we signed the contract today. And Ed Mitchell, who was part of this advisory board, is such a good friend. We're on a dinner group where we have dinner once a quarter, a NAIOP dinner group, president of NAIOP 3 years ago in South Florida. And we have, it's Terry Stiles and Doug Egan. You guys know them. And most of a lot of people that are on that advisory board. But we have dinner once a quarter just to talk about the market and what we can do to help each other and grow our friendships, because we're all in the same fight, and you want everybody, frankly, to win, and there's enough for everybody, right? So that is that's kind of what made my day outside of hanging out and getting to talk to you guys. So I'll wrap up and I'll kind of tell you, the things I think about on a daily basis. And it really is this. Helen Keller said, life is the greatest adventure or nothing. I think about it every single day. I think about, I wake up and I look in the mirror and I'm like, let's make something out of nothing today. Because that's what we've been doing for 25 years. And I think in life you have to turn over every rock, look around every corner. Do things, friends, that you know, like, and trust, right? What gets focused on is what gets done. If you ask my team, they will probably tell you all of these because they hear them during the week, all week. It's kind of I think they'd like to shut me up now and again. But I really do believe what gets focused on, focus matters. I don't care if it's your studies, I don't care if it's your relationships, your marriages, your girlfriends, your work, whatever you're doing, your children, what gets focused on is what gets done. It's never different this time. The people that are getting out over their skis already in this market did it last time. You have to learn something. I think it's never different. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. There is something for everybody, right? The table is big. There is always a next transaction. If you've got your character, if you've got great self-esteem, if you've got your friends and you own your passion, it's impossible to lose. Do the right things more right than anyone else and you win. I really believe that. Being ladies and gentlemen matters today because people generally forget their manners. It's kind of like people that don't have shiny shoes, that don't clean their shoes or buff them. You don't notice them. You only notice people that really clean their shoes today because almost nobody does it. Be the one that makes the difference because it matters. And a CEO or someone that runs a company is going to look at that. And you're going to say, God, well, how they treat their car inside is how they run their life. Every time I interview, I walk somebody to the car. I want to see how they run their lives. Because it's going to be ship-shape and tidy in my shop. I always have a meal with someone. I want to see what their manners look like. Because if they don't have good manners eating, then they cannot go out and represent us. And if you're dealing in deals the size that I expect them to grow to, and we're only going to get larger and larger, then they've got to have the mentality that they have a lot of care about themselves. Don't confuse volatility with common sense opportunity. Really important. The genius, as I said, the genius is in the consistency. I think I've said this. I think we're going to call it 10 now because I live it. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Dadgummit, be nice. Be nice. People like hanging with really nice, smart, fun people, right? Have an exacerbated passion for getting things done. And I will say to you in closing, it is always about the passion. It is always about the team. Look after each other. It comes back tenfold. I'll stop there. If you have any questions, I'm sick of hearing myself. And if you don't, I was glad to be here. So thank you. Yep, that's it. I'm out of gas. Anybody, anything? Or? Yeah. Gosh, you know, it's going to be big. I can just tell you. I can feel it. I know it's going to be big. I keep thinking about Wolf of Wall Street because I know there's this level of sleaze that's going to come into it because they want to distribute it through the broker-dealer network, which means penny stocks and all of that, and you get to a lower level mentality and, you know, and a less trained individual, and people don't always know how to do the right thing. So I think there are going to be some bumps before it happens. And, you know, the first thing I said to my lawyer, I had him attend a call with me, and I'm like, do we want to be on the board of this? Because they kept going back to broker-dealer as a method of distribution, you know, so that people could put in $100 or $200. And you know the whole penny stock game, people just get taken. And I am what I am, but all I've got is my reputation. And I don't know that I'm suited for that, right? I wish I knew more. You got what I know. But I can send you, if you give me your card, I can send you a couple of really good papers on it, because I'm reading a lot of content to try to inform myself. Okay, and it's showing up in real estate conferences now. It was in NAIOPS. I'm on the national board of NAIOP. They had a whole crowdfunding thing last week in Denver when I was there. I was at RealShare yesterday in Miami. Part of the talk was on crowdfunding. So it's happening. People are interested. People care. It just has to be aligned with good quality. So.
I talked a little bit about crowdfunding a couple weeks ago in class, but not all the students really know. You might just kind of briefly describe what it is. And no one knows, but just...
No, well, I think you probably know more than I, sincerely. You know what? I'll tell you what I think it is. What I think it is, and all I know is from the example they've used on these numerous calls. Let's say you have a $10 million deal. It's a 60-40 split deal. 40% is equity. That $4 million has to be raised. However, they think most crowdfunding is, the sweet spot is somewhere between $1 and $2 million, is what I keep hearing in the New York markets. That money is raised, will be raised perhaps through broker-dealer networks where people are working the phones, selling a transaction, pitching, you know, X yield. And do you want to put in, you want $200, $300, $400, $500 of this, $5,000, $10,000? And that's the clarity I have right now, which isn't a whole lot, right? But I mean, that's what scares me about it, or scares me. That's what concerns me about it.
So in years past, there could not be general solicitation for private placements. Now there can. So it's the general solicitation part of the general solicitation that has you scared.
That's what I think is going to be concerning, because there'll be people that are unscrupulous, and you know that probably isn't going to set well with me. You know, anybody else?
When you're building these warehouses.
Yeah. No, go ahead. It was the girl. I thought we should take the girl first. Go ahead.
When you're building these warehouses, do you ever put in the pallet rack or the conveyor systems? Or
No. We bring it to certificate of occupancy. We will spec out a number of units that can be built, and we'll build one or two to kind of just kick it off, because sometimes Smaller users may not plan ahead like a Fortune 500 may. And they want it, they want to move in 30 days, and it'll take 60 days. You know, it'll take 2 weeks to draw the plans for a TI and, 3 weeks to permit it and 30 to 45 days to build it, and you kind of want to be ahead of that. So, good question.
I think many companies do like to build their own factories in some other countries like China, Mexico, Vietnam, because of the lower cost. And I want to know, what do you think this kind of offshore trade would affect the demand for domestic, like industrial real estate, especially for warehouses?
Yeah, you know China's a whole nother conversation today, right? I will tell you, in the United States, 25, depending on the year, 25 to 35% of the industrial real estate that comes to the market is owner-user, is built by users. So it is still a piece of the market. The thing that made leasing so strong following the recession is that people were out of money. And they didn't have the money to build a building for themselves any longer. And it's kind of like you can buy a car or you can lease a nicer car, right? I mean, you could lease a nicer car if you're leasing it, and you're going to have it for 36 months or something like that. That's going to be a nicer car for the same payment if you went out and bought it. And people are coming off the bench and leasing space. I don't know if I'm hitting your question right.
Yeah.
Follow up. Go ahead.
I'm asking the offshore trade. Like many companies, they build their own factories in
Yeah.
some other countries because the cost will be lower.
Yeah.
So that would like to. What do you think of this kind of offshore trade would affect the demands for domestic warehouses?
I think I understand the question. I think you're going to see the most significant growth here because you're going to see big DCs, distribution centers, kind of like a giant hub that spoke out and so you'll do like a 1 million square foot Amazon center. And then around it, you'll see 250,000 here, like Orlando or Lakeland. Lakeland just built 1 million square feet. You guys should see that. That would be a great trip, right? But then you'll see another DC, as you know, happened in Tampa, that's smaller. And they're talking about another one east of Orlando that's smaller. And they'll spoke out to they'll have a hub, and then they'll have satellites that get the last mile of it, or store a different bulk product. Anybody? Go ahead.
Do you think Lakeland's going to be kind of that center of that spoke?
God, I hope so. I am betting big there right now. We are working on another transaction that we think could happen in the next 2 weeks, maybe sooner, where we could build 1.5 million square feet.
So it's just going to become an industrial corridor?
I think the I-4 corridor is what the next 50 years is about. I hope I'm not wrong, but life's the greatest adventure or nothing, right? You gotta swing to hit something. So,
kind of touching on that, what's your greatest concern in that area, the Tampa Orlando corridor? What's your greatest concern in South Florida, like when you're developing?
that's great. That is a great question. I shared with you before the DOT is going to put $23 billion into 21 miles. You know what that means? That's all roadway. The concrete is going to get sucked out of the market. It's going to get sucked up. All the concrete is going to be going to somebody that pays more than anyone. Remember the jokes about the government creating a screwdriver that's $1,000? Well, that's how the government is. Okay? An entrepreneur would never do that, right? Private enterprise would never do that, right? Because they're volume oriented. So a lot of the resources are going to get sucked up. I think it's going to drive construction cost up, which is going to decrease development. That's why when you see us, and I said early on, like 6 hours ago, when you were actually excited to hear me talk, that at that point, we're trying to go as fast as possible. What's a recession? Because that's going to happen as the next recession hits, right? We think that's We think that's 36 months off. Some think it's a little further. Because of what I went through, I would call that last recession a bona fide fanny whipping, right? So I'll never forget it. So I'm gonna pull in much earlier, within 24 months. Okay, but that's what I think is going to happen. I think construction costs are going to go through the roof because of scarcity of resources. It's going to reduce development, and it's going to drive rents. Okay, that's what I think is going to happen.
Kind of related to that, the trains, I know the one that was canceled between Tampa and Orlando and the one that's going to go forth in South Florida, does that affect you at all?
No, I think it's a great thing. Remember, that's done by Fortress. Fortress bought Flagler, okay? And I think that train is going to be wonderful. I think that they're going through all of these different counties and they're asking them how they feel and all of that and trying to make it as comfortable as possible. They're building a train. Make no bones about it. The train's going in, okay? They're doing everything that they need to do politically for the papers and for the communities. They're building a train. Nobody really has a say, right? They own the tracks. But I will tell you this. The pitch is that it's about people transportation. We know the profit in the tracks is freight. So how much freight are those cars going to carry in the long run? It'll be interesting to see. Great question. Anybody else? I'm tired of me. You tired of me?
Your warehousing.
I'm coming.
Are you doing anything innovative for prospects of drones planning to teach parts in warehousing?
Drones are big, huh? It's a great conversation right now, right? I was at a dinner party, at a YPO dinner party. We had two generals that were there in Tampa, and they brought these incredible drones. Both of them were like $100,000 a piece. They're combat drones. They were playing with them in this guy's front yard, and one of them crashed, and it was interesting to watch. But those things, they had it all hooked up to TV, and they think that drones are going to get as small as like the size of let me go back for you, like a Kennedy 50-cent piece, okay, or a Susan B. Anthony dollar. I don't have anything else. That's all the money I got. Yes, sir.
I was just going to build on her question, probably to clarify it, because I don't think she still understood what you were saying. Like, there's seems like a bunch of different sections in warehousing.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about your warehouse, I'm thinking about distribution centers.
Uh-huh.
I think she might be thinking about warehouses where they build things inside of them.
Manufacturing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do they still do that in the U.S.?
So I think that's.
So you know what I think? I think what we're seeing a lot of companies. You hear about onshoring now, and you see companies that are coming back. It's all about cost, right? You see, a lot of organizations went overseas over the last 30 years, say, and now you're starting to see them coming back. I think that this e-commerce is going to drive some of that. Before all the manufacturing was happening overseas, more manufacturing is happening in the U.S. God, don't we all wish there was so much more? But people are profit-minded and they're quality-minded, and it's kind of like that's why when I say have passion, because it's kind of like suck it up and get up, and we should be the country that we were brought up to be, right? And when people are if people are working at a greater pace or a greater passion than us, I think the victor is going to get the spoils. I don't know if I think it's a long answer and a great conversation, but that's I think I'm just touching on it. But that's you could do that for a whole class. That's a great conversation. Onshoring would be an amazing class to be held, and I would hold his feet to the fire, and I'd get 2 classes out of that. And so anybody else? Anything else? So have fun, have passion, and if you don't step up to swing, it's impossible to connect. And surround yourself with great people, and remember, it's you can hire smart people. And I don't mean to say they're a dime a dozen. You can hire really smart accountants, right? And really, really good lawyers. You know what you can't hire? You can't hire guts. You can't hire being nice. You can't hire passion. You can't hire a good heart. So surround yourself with really great people, because in the end, people will do business with people they know, like, and trust. So thanks for listening to me. It was long, wasn't it? Yeah, I was right on time, wasn't I?
Okay, we have the opportunity to